We can? We can move ahead with heads.
Very good head.
Yes, we can. Ahead. Ahead of heads. Hello and welcome to another episode of Cybernews Weekly Podcast. My name is Gintras, and today with me in the studio are Vincentas Bobonis, our head of security research.
Yes.
And Ernestas Nabris, our senior journalist.
Hi there.
Today we're going to talk Apple, this huge American tech company. First of all, we all know that the Apple's App Store is kind of renowned for its walled garden approach and strict app review process. But all is not well in that garden, it seems. That's because our research, a new one, has revealed something maybe uncomforting or even disturbing. And you can, of course, read it all on our website. But Ernestus, you have prepared that piece for mass audience to consume, let's say. What exactly is the problem with Apple?
Well, I will not take credit for the job I didn't do. It's Vincentas' team.
Sure.
Who should be proud of it. But the findings are surprising. Well, 8% of Apple apps, not Apple, but iOS apps had 800,000 secrets hard-coded in them. So that's a staggering amount. Then the second question is what that means.
Yes, exactly. That was my second question.
Yeah, right. And when you look deeper, you find that probably many of those keys are not very sensitive. They are related to some advertising services to probably track who serves which ad, etc. But, some of the keys are very sensitive and could lead directly to breaches.
Yeah, and even more, probably financial losses at least, because we found quite a few payment provider keys and so on. And about sensitive keys, I would say it's like with USA RICO law, as in it's not illegal or sensitive, by default, but when they're combined with something else, like I would take an API ID or like a MySQL database address, but when it's combined with, secrets such as username and password, it goes into a full bundle, which leads to exposure of data, likely breaches, full system takeovers, financial losses, and so on. So, it's a big pack, and it's only 8% of the apps which had so much secrets. We only checked around 11%, if I'm not mistaken. So from checking, it's 3/4 or something around that. So 75% of checked apps had secrets. So the numbers ain't so promising. So where's the security review process helping in here? I'm not sure. I thoroughly reviewed Apple's policies, and they kind of shake off the responsibility and say that it's developers' fault if they do that. As we all know, maybe, FBI and a lot of other institutions in USA have actually sent out guidelines and already told a million times that, hard coding secrets such as passwords, such as MySQL addresses and so on is not a great practice. It's actually pretty terrible, and it could land you in jail if you expose too much, user data, or at least make your company be fined through GDPR and so on. So it's pretty sensitive information, all that bunch, and there's a lot of extremely sensitive stuff which could lead to probably millions of damage.
Vincentas and Ernestas, explain to me a regular user of apps, let's say, right? How can these keys be abused, and what are these keys in the first place? Like you say, secrets, right?
Yeah.
As a regular, normal guy using apps and not really thinking about what is there, what are the secrets? How can they be extracted as well? And how can they be abused in general and hurt me as a regular app user?
Yeah, well, extracting them is kind of a hard procedure to perform, especially the logic behind it. There's quite a few researchers around it, but they've all been done academically, so this is probably the first one globally in such scale, in such a short time notice, kind of. All the project went for, probably 3 months or so in the research phase. There's been a lot of programming, a lot of thinking, development, research engineering, and so on. So basically, how they can be extracted is through reverse engineering. There's some complex processes involved, which goes into decryption algorithms, into parsing the data, into searching the parsed data, into cleaning up, and into bundling those secrets into something that's a pack of secrets which can be actually used in real life scenarios. We didn't use them, we didn't verify them, but we've done all we could do legally, so we could know how much of the apps in Apple's App Store, are actually really vulnerable to such attacks. So, what are secret keys?
Yeah.
Secret keys are basically business secrets, some confidential information which should never be exposed. If it's not like direct logins to your company's database, I mean, it might be an address of your company's database. It's already a business secret. You don't want any regular Joe knowing your database address, right, as a company?
Yeah, but then regular Joe would not be able very easily
But
to
I
extract that
believe
information.
those keys were stored in plain text, and so for sophisticated attacker, it would be quite easy to extract them.
Well, if he developed, or if they developed if they developed something to actually go through all the process, because of course, they are encoded, but source code is already compiled, So to decode, to extract those secrets, you still have to work out a process which was probably never fully worked out before. I think we're first globally to do it on such a scale with Apple App Store. Some years ago, we already did with Android. We are constantly monitoring IoT search engines for secrets. So we already, knees deep in that swamp, and we already developed some processes which we could transfer to Apple App Store. So, but I wouldn't say it's so easy. But of course, in the future, when somebody else takes this process into a full scale, maybe they'll develop, a tool where you can simply extract such an app. I've seen some tools like open source in GitHub that are able to partially do what we did, but we did it like really in depth. So it means we're not just parsing config files, we're going through source code, we're going through different config files, because some apps actually embed test, staging, and production configs directly into the source archive, because iOS apps are basically zip archives which store metadata, store configurations, store resources, and store the compiled code. So there's quite a lot to do to investigate an app and to develop a framework which would work for any app. That's where the hard part is, I would say.
Is it harder to do than for comparison on Android?
Well, Android already has some open source tools which are fully available, and fully worked out by a bigger community. With Apple, I've seen the same tool actually kind of supporting Apple apps, but it's not the same. Just the thing is that currently available open source tools take around 5 to 10 minutes to scan one app. In our approach, we do it in seconds.
Well, for me as a user, I have dozens of apps. Each contains, on average, 5 secrets hard-coded in its source code. The app communicates with various endpoints. So what does that mean for me as a user? I'm already in danger?
Yeah. Oh, no, it depends on what you put into an app. We've seen quite a few Firebase and other buckets exposed. So we've worked out proof of concept, which will probably be aired sometime, where we real-time show how, a user inputs some data into a chat room, and we can actually, see the metadata, where he's from, what he texted, who he texted, and so on. So in that case, if you use such apps and it's actually vulnerable, if it's leaking the data, then yeah, of course you're gonna have a bad time probably. You're gonna be contacted by some spammers. You might fall victim to man-in-the-middle attacks. You might suffer some financial losses as a person too.
You also found hundreds of cloud storage buckets that require no authentication and can be easily accessed. Did you check what's inside?
For the ones that are, not authenticatable, which were just open, yeah, we did with some. And it's shocking findings. There's quite a few adult-oriented apps for chatting and so on. So if you happen to use those apps, you might have your conversations or pictures or something like that exposed to anybody on the net.
And then you can maybe be blackmailed or whatever, right?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm pretty sure. And we reported some of those findings to institutions. I cannot comment any further, but it was pretty shocking.
But did you contact Apple about all that?
Well, it's not technically Apple's fault that they do not, check that, because they're not legally allowed, like us, to use the passwords of people, If it's a password, if it's a password protected resource, you cannot just access it because it would be straight illegal. That's why they shake off the responsibility and say that it's developers' fault. They can check, for likely to be secrets, but they cannot verify them. So what do that if developer says that, oh wait, it's not actually production secret. We use this stuff in testing, so we could, catch something before we release, and we're not supposed, to unexpose it. So it's kind of legally a dead end there, and I don't think that Apple could say anything to us.
Okay. Let me rephrase maybe then. So the elders of the internet, so to speak, they're telling us and me that Apple has this centralized model, the App Store.
Yes.
Where every app must pass review before approval. And they have more human reviews than automated reviews than Google.
Yes.
So
it's
again,
technical specialists who are
they
assigned
have
to
slipped
that.
through all that?
No, they cannot legally check if
So
the
why
password
are-
is
why are
secure.
reviews there for?
secrets? I mean, why do Apple allow hard coding secrets as a practice?
Yeah, exactly.
Because it can be used in testing environments. It could be easier for developers, Maybe the app checks whether it's already, in a sandbox environment, if it's being tested, if it's in staging or something like that, or if it's, in production. We cannot legally check whether the credentials we find are, usable, because that would be a crime. We don't do crimes, we do research.
Yeah, of course. But then, like you yourself say, it's a legal dead end. Basically, there's no way.
Apple can do anything about it until some laws are adjusted.
Okay. So this is a question for
basically,
politicians
it's
and
not illegal
lawmakers.
to include the secret keys in the
And
source
of course, it's a responsibility for developers. You have, as a developer, as a company who processes data, you have to protect your own customers. So, in final words, it's a responsibility for developer to ensure that no credentials that you leak can actually lead to user data leaks too, So while Apple does have a rigorous kind of process to get your app approved and on App Store, I don't think it's so rigorous for updates, for example. So if you expose a secret in the long run somewhere, when you add a new model or something and you think, it's easier to drop a config in plain text or base encode it or anything, you're going to have a bad time probably in the long run, because Apple won't protect you.
What about the developers then? They kind of are interested into having a secure app, but why do they leave those secrets?
Well, it's hard to tell because some of them are uneducated probably.
Okay.
Others maybe try to, save time, save resources. If you drop something directly into your front end of an app, you don't have to code any modules that would, access the sensitive data on some third-party server of yours, because you have to still work out a management of authentication, a whole process, so that only that app can access the data it needs, not somebody else on the net.
So basically
you add
copying
another
from
endpoint.
GitHub.
Yeah, hopefully not, hopefully not. But there's quite a few logic apps in there.
Another question then. You yourself said like the FBI and CISA, I think the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency is advising against, encoding, embedding sensitive information, hard coding them in the source code, right? But what do you do then? How do you proceed then? If it's bad practice, what is good practice?
So good practice is definitely, first encoding, then encrypting your sensitive data. Then another good practice is keeping your credentials on a third-party server where your apps or your interfaces, whatever, can access them when they're verified to be, a legitimate source which can access the data. and you have to have some authorization authentication practices in place. So there's ways you can work it out. We can see that from the percentage of apps which do not expose secrets. They're perfectly working. Some of them are actually processing user data.
What's the percentage again? How many percent of the apps you checked were hard-coded?
75%.
75. 3 out
had,
of 4.
Yeah, had something in them. But
Is there some- I'm sorry.
not all of
Yeah.
them were like totally sensitive. Some of them are crash reporting keys, which you could technically use like in some ways to be a nuisance to the app's developer, because you could then probably produce and push some irrelevant, non-existing, entries. But it's not that sensitive. For the most sensitive ones, it wasn't like a very terribly big percentage in my mind. But thinking still that we researched, we reviewed a bunch of apps. We already had found like thousands of databases just being open. We checked only the addresses. We didn't check, the usernames and passwords. If we were actually cyber criminals and we would not care about, laws, about moral principles, we could also check all those passwords we found just being hosted on Apple App Store. And that could probably lead to way more actual data being leaked. So I would say it's hard to tell, and I'm not legally allowed to check, so I will have to,
Will
just say
hackers
nothing
do
about
that
it.
now that we disclosed the issue?
I doubt that it's easy to do, but I'm pretty sure that while we were, first to release such a publication on large scale, people who are interested in money and who have this as their, main bed provider, as in cybercrime, bread provider. That sounds stupid. Well, they actually probably do, and they do not disclose. It's called, 0 days when you perform attacks through some sophisticated processes, exploits, vulnerabilities, whatnot, and you don't disclose it. It's actually a practice that a lot of governments use, a lot of cyber criminals, APTs use. So I don't know. I'm probably, if I would have to just guess, I would say probably they are already, doing that. So more people will know about that, but it's still like there's still a big need, a technical knowledge need to, fully perform the process. But of course, we have shown that it's fully automatable. If you have the resources for it, as in monetary, time resources, it actually can be automated, like at bulk. Maybe you could do 100% of Apple App Store in some time.
Right. So summarizing it, one could say that if you're an Apple device user and you download apps from their app store, you have a problem, and there's no way to protect yourself, really. Or is there?
Well,
it's not only for Apple, probably.
It's not probably just for Apple. I mean, it's just, all-encompassing thing. And you have to, at this moment, if you're tech-savvy and you're using Android, you can at least download some tool on GitHub or a Docker hub and, test those apps. For Apple, I don't think it's working. Last time I checked, it's not really doing the thing you want it to do. Maybe Cybernews will sometime develop a tool to check whether an app you use is secure. Until then, there's hopes and prayers.
Maybe we should run each app on separate Docker container and also limit any third-party connections.
Well, Apple is already employing like separated environments logic, so it cannot be so simply, jailbroken, especially new ones. But I mean, I just would not suggest putting any personal data into any app that's exposed to internet, because anything you put onto internet, is basically there forever. So,
well, probably you own a phone. How do you protect yourself?
Well, I use secure communications where it's possible. I don't really post a lot on anything on social media. I don't post my pictures, which are, new or something like that, since I started working here. And I would not say I'm really well kind of protected. I researched, myself. And I found quite a few imposters of me. Like when I'm working in here, not so much, but I do have like online presence in some forums and so on. So there's always scammers and some people impersonating you. The more data you put up online for those people to access, the more we can impersonate you, the better, you know. So
You say you're not posting pictures, but here you are on video.
Maybe
Yeah.
it's AI generated. We don't know.
We don't know. Yeah, we don't know.
But it's way
Who
easier,
are
you know,
you?
to find social profile of a person you're trying to impersonate, and to get that information from there than from Cybernews Podcast. Somebody does that, well, it will be the first time
Okay.
for me.
Okay, moving on. We stay with Apple, but this time it's probably a bit of better news for the company. Ernestus has written a big and interesting piece about the buzz in the AI industry, basically, and the buzz is concerning Apple's claims that its new Mac Studio, quite a cozy small one, as I imagine, can locally run 600 billion parameter AI models such as DeepSeek R1 or Llama. So even with a hefty price tag, which is, if I'm not mistaken, 10,000 plus, it's far cheaper than whatever NVIDIA is offering, right? So what's the buzz about? Ernestus, is in your opinion the buzz justified, and is NVIDIA going down thanks to Apple?
Well, NVIDIA is probably not going down. It still has its iron grip on all the AI training and big data centers. But
Maybe the big data centers are going down.
no, they are not. But what Apple kind of does, they are democratizing the access to the AI. So if you want to run your AI model at home, now you have an option to do that, because previously, if you wanted to run something like a mid-size AI model, for example, 72 billion Llama, you couldn't do that because you don't have a video card that could fit that model inside of its video RAM. For example, the largest consumer graphic card from NVIDIA probably now offers like 30 gigabytes of video RAM, and it costs like $3,000. So you need few of those to run complex systems. So it's not easy to set up. And now Apple comes here and say, look, Apple Studio, one device, you can run DeepSeek R1, which has almost 700 billion parameters. So I think that kind of introduces an option for small studios, for individuals to have their AI at home. You don't need any clouds, no accounts, no monthly payments. Your data stays at home. You do not send anything to those companies offering AI services. Your data is not sold. And even, for example, and for businesses, like if you work with personal data, you're kind of golden. Now you have everything on your premises in one small box.
So are you going to develop AI at home then?
I already do on Windows computer, actually, and it's very expensive to do. Well, I bought it for gaming, obviously. But it has like 20 gigs of video memory. So also has a lot of RAM and kind of can run models of up to 32 billion parameters comfortably. But yeah, and I like that because those small models are getting better and better. For example, the team from Qwen, the Alibaba company, released the QWQ model, which is almost as good as DeepSeek R1. So I'm already doing that. And now if I had to choose my new system, I would definitely go with Mac, because you can have not 20 gigabytes of video RAM, but 128 probably gigabytes of unified memory, and for the similar price, and run those models while doing something else. For example, like your everyday tasks. So you have your AI companion in one machine.
Mm-hmm. But it's still expensive, isn't it? Like for an individual user, like in my head, in my very amateur tech head, it's the Apple Vision Pro of AI, right? I mean, it's $10,000 plus. Vision Pro was and remains, I think, 3,500, 3,500 at least. So, I mean, if you're rich and you have time on your hands to play around, or if you have done calculations in your head and made sure that this will pay off for you or a small studio, but yet you own, that's the calculations you have to do, I guess, if you before deciding to purchase that product from Apple.
Well, $10,000 is for the largest and the best model. But usually you don't need that. Do you really always use the most expensive tiers of AI are you buying 1,000 tier ChatGPT or 200? Probably not. Many people just use the free models available online today. And Apple came here and they kind of introduced the pricing where on each price point up to the $10,000, you can get the best machine for AI. It's no competition. If you want to set up the similar system capable of running the similar model, you will get a lot more expensive system from Windows.
What's the cheapest than what Apple is offering?
Well, Mac Mini is $600. And it has 16 gigabytes of unified memory, so probably it can run about 10 billion parameter AI models quite well. I would say probably they are too small for something more advanced use cases, but for, I don't know, simple editing, proofreading, probably that's enough.
Well, my personal opinion, that they are targeting kind of probably like small studios, groups of friends. When you want, something like an AI capable machine, I would say that you don't want it, alone. Why would you need that if you're handling only your personal data? Probably it's fine, to work with something like that's easier to access and cheaper. But when you're working with something a bit more sensitive, you plan ahead, you have like a studio group of 4 or 5 friends, you can own one Mac computer for $10,000 and, keep your data secure and on your premises. That's what I think they're targeting. Also, it could be just, their marketing approach, because now they're developing ARM processors which have unified memory, which have terrific performance on, video, like compared to how it went years beyond when they used Intel processors. They had to have like separate cards or have it an integrated GPU card. Now it's a bit different because the whole architecture, how Apple now runs, is way more efficient than it was like, for example, 5 years ago. So that's just another thing. They didn't like really change a lot, in my personal opinion. They didn't change a lot architecturally. They just unlocked, a new selling channel, and it's actually a good use case for it, because 5 years ago, people were interested, like 4 or 3 years ago, in M1 Max, because they can run games, kind of. You don't need anything else. You don't need to hook up an external card now anymore. You can run games on your MacBook as you could run on your phone, and they just chose this approach to apply to computers. Now we see it applied to computers which more resemble servers, like, studio use cases. So I would say it's a probably very profitable choice for them to go into that direction.
Yeah, and Apple was already a competitor to NVIDIA. For example, if you are editing videos or doing anything else on your computer, you have a choice to make. Do you want to make your own machine, probably buy NVIDIA GPU, the processor, bundle everything together and run it, or you can just buy Mac Studio, Mac Mini, MacBook, whatever. Yeah. And they are quite affordable right now, and you can run AI on top of that.
So NVIDIA is obviously not going down, but they're still going to hurt maybe just a little bit, or maybe just feel the pressure to do better.
We don't know what they're developing in their backyard.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe NVIDIA had already taken notes that mobile processors, that ARM architecture is probably the future, because it costs less, it is more efficient, and it's more powerful. So it hits all the free spots. So, I think there's going to be some retaliation, but, I'm not an expert in here, because, it's probably private closed source data.
Yeah, but I agree. I mean, even though, of course, the world of AI will still need these huge data centers, of course, but the very visuals right now is that we don't need that, Apple says, and we will run it locally the AI model. We will enable the user to run your AI stuff locally. And then, these huge data centers, they require a lot of energy, and we require a lot less energy. So we are looking better just by this.
Yeah, but you won't use Apple machine to train AI models. You still need those large data centers for those long, complex tasks. The training AI is probably takes weeks on those very, very, very powerful and power-hungry machines. So Apple can probably take some market for inference. You don't need so much cloud anymore for users to run AI locally. It's basically on your desk. Well, about the competition with NVIDIA. Also, NVIDIA is kind of abandoning the consumer market because it's not as profitable as those large data centers. For probably the last few years, the GPUs are getting more expensive. It's hard to find them because those launches are kind of paper launches. They say, yeah, you can buy the new NVIDIA RTX for 5090 or something, but when you try to find that on Amazon or Newegg, there is none. So Apple just kind of seeps in and offers some affordable devices. And if many consumers chooses Apple over other ecosystems like Windows, so suddenly you have a large market share with Apple computers, then probably game studios will see the change and think, well, why we should release on Steam or other Windows platform if, look, we have a lot of paying customers for Apple ecosystem. Maybe we should look here also. So this development is very interesting to watch what might happen.
Yeah, especially having in mind that Apple hasn't been a big player on the AI scene so lately. While all the other companies were talking and hyping their stuff up, Apple was maybe behaving silently and moving forward without much, fanfare. Because Apple Intelligence is one thing that comes to mind when we talk about Apple and AI, and this one. And I'm not sure what else really. Siri, well, yeah, but
Siri is connected to Apple
but then there was no big claim that they had.
Well,
this is interesting, really.
No, I think a lot of companies had learned that you cannot just shout too much and then do nothing about it.
OpenAI has not learned anything.
Of course. I mean, a lot of companies, not all companies in the world had learned that. But the thing is that I think Apple tries to, keep the information under the rug until it's already stable enough to be released to general public, just not to build too much hype and then under-deliver, because we've seen a lot of companies, promising and under-delivering constantly. New tools are being released half-baked. When we
Tesla?
get patches, any really tool that's recently been bought by even myself is usually half-released because they meet the deadlines too quick, They have to, for the shareholders usually, they have to promise some unrealistic goals when they release it half-baked, and then they promise to deliver the updates during the run. It's like beta testing, but with real people, with real data and so on. So it's not a great approach for a regular consumer, while for companies, it seems it works. When some companies already have a good reputation, I don't think that they want to slander it, and just...
Yeah, of course. And also, Apple has always cared more about true worth of their products than market caps. We see a lot of companies that are sliding down right now. Monday was awful in the stock market for a lot of technology companies.
Crypto
like
too.
Tesla, Facebook, all of them. They were going down big time. And they will keep going down because of, we know what. Right. Anything else to add about Apple and AI, guys?
Well,
I'm interested. Is AI something the security researchers use?
Oh yeah, of course. I think I already talked it about on some other podcast or an interview, but definitely, yeah, we do, because we have some processes implemented into our tools. Some of them internal, some of them actually reachable through cybernews.com page under tool section. So there's definitely some AI processing. For example, in Ransom Looker, we do scraping from the websites, but then we have to enhance the information somehow, print the reports about it to make it understandable, readable, and whatnot, to understand how big the impact is of like a company being breached, like because there's quite a lot of companies and they're all different. I don't know all the companies in the world, so I need to know like a short, too long didn't read a post from my machine to tell me what's going on, with a new breach. So we apply in those cases and in multiple other ones. So yeah, of course we do. Yeah,
Is there a market, in your opinion, for AI on premises?
definitely. Yes.
Here.
Yes.
And is Apple
like,
well positioned for that?
Yeah, I think Apple is one of the better positioned companies right now with their new approaches. Of course, I didn't try them myself yet. I really wish that we could do that sometime in the future, maybe soon future, because we do have, like as I mentioned, some internal projects, internal tools that we work with, and I'm not the happiest person in the world sharing my data with OpenAI or Google or anybody else who actually keeps those models, while they, promise that they're not gonna share it, they're not gonna learn from it. There's still some logical gaps because they keep the data at least for 30 days. Then there's, USA or other laws that actually require them to, share it on some circumstances. We're not in those circumstances, and I hope we never, be there where some law agency requests that data from us, because, but it's still not something that one can be happy with, because we know that if they keep that data, it's not only the law agencies which can access it. Sometimes, due to leaks or due to security misconfigurations or actual hackers going for social engineering or technical attacks, can also access the data. If it's kept anywhere in any format, sometimes it happens. And to accept that risk, you have to have a risk appetite as a company for it. And we're fine with it until we find another cheaper and more logical solution. But the future, looks bright for Apple, I think, in here.
Yeah. Also, if the big providers of AI services plan to introduce advertising into their models, like you chat with a chatbot and it offers you
Now
to
I will have
refresh
this
with
vision.
Coca-Cola.
I can actually really see it now. Yeah, I can actually really see it.
Okay.
Hey, don't offer them those
Yeah.
suggestions. If they
Well,
watch,
let's
don't
not
do it,
mention
guys.
it. Let's
Don't
not
do it.
mention it in public, right? So, believe it or not, we're running out of time, and we want to thank you for listening and watching us. This was Vincentas, Ernestas, and me, Ginteris. Thank you, and see you next time.